do a short presentation. We are very proud to present our speaker, Scott Ambler, who is an outstanding Canadian software engineer, consultant, and author in the area of agile software development. Scott is the Vice President and Chief Scientist for Discipline Agile at the Project Management Institute. He's a very well-known author of a number of reference books about the Discipline Agile Delivery Toolkit, the Unified Process, Agile Software Development, UML, the Capability Maturity Model development, and in general, a very active member of the international community in the area. We are really very glad and proud to receive Scott today at Urucon, and we are looking forward to a very relevant and interesting presentation. So now, Scott, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Buenos dias, everybody. I hope I didn't mispronounce that too badly. But anyways, that's pretty much the level of my Spanish, unfortunately. So my name's Scott Ambler. As you heard, I'm the VP and Chief Scientist for DA at the PMI. And what I'd like to do today is walk you through, do an overview of a very deep topic, but how do you apply discipline agile strategies, and particularly in the software development space and the solution delivery space. So as you heard, I've been doing Agile for quite a long time, since the very beginning. And I'm the co-creator of the Discipline Agile Toolkit along with Mark Lyons, as well as some fundamental Agile techniques back in the day, particularly around modeling and data development. But anyways, having said all that, let's jump into it. So I'm going to take questions at the end. So feel free to put them in the chat or however you like. I'm going to first of all, talk about our vision of scaling Agile and what it really means and what we're seeing in the marketplace. Then I'm going to walk through different Agile and the 4 architectural aspects of DA: mindset, people, flow, and practices. And then I'll talk about how do you do continuous improvement? How do you become a learning organization and continually improve? Because that's what you really need to do. It's not about adopting frameworks. Frameworks like Scrum and SAFe and others are great. They're good starts, but they're not your ending point. They're merely beginnings on your Agile journey. So as you probably know, the Project Management Institute is a not-for-profit organization. Our goal is to help you to learn, to help you work smarter and become change makers, to become successful in your careers and have an impact on your organization, on society as a whole. So we really are here to help. So it's a very interesting and valuable organization. So excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, as you can tell. It's the beginning of winter here in Canada. So what does it mean to scale Agile? When we talk about it at PMI, what does that mean? So we see scaling Agile as 2 different but related topics. First of all, there's tactical scaling. How do we scale Agile at the team level? And this is what most of the scaling frameworks address, and that's great. So how do you take on and address the various complexity factors that team or a team of teams faces? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But there's also strategic scaling. How do we scale Agile across the enterprise to all aspects of our organization, not just about software development? So today's talk is mostly focused on team agility, but we will put agility into enterprise context as well, because that's critical. So when it comes to tactical scaling, it's about more than just team size. Many people like to think of scaling as, how do you address different team sizes? So how are you Agile on a team of 5 people, or a team of 50 people, or a team of 500 people? And certainly that's important. And certainly a team of 5 people works very differently than a team of 500 people. But there's other scaling factors, other complexity factors that we need to address. How much are we geographically distributed? If you remember, for those of you who have been in the community for a while, you probably remember, 2 years ago, there was a great religious debate over whether or not you can you can work in an Agile manner remotely. Many people, many of the zealots, and I use that term on purpose, believed, or purists believed, that you needed to be co-located, and that if you weren't co-located, you weren't agile, period. There is nobody in the world that believes that today. If there's one thing that COVID has taught us, it's that we can, in fact, learn how to work remotely. Now, yes, we might be more effective being co-located, without a doubt, but certainly we can have a distributed workforce. And then, are we organizationally distributed? Are we a very small organization? Are we a collection of different groups of people in the same company working together? Do we have coalition partners? How available are skills? Do we have the right people for the job right now? Or do we have to grow them or hire them? Do we have regulatory compliance? So we might have no compliance at all, or we might have life critical existential compliancy requirements. And of course, we're going to work in different manners depending on where we're in that spectrum. How complex is our solution? How complex is the problem domain that we're facing? So the point is that different teams face different situations. If you have a straightforward problem to address, you will work in a different manner than if you have a very complex problem to address, of course. So one size does not fit all. What you really want is a fit for purpose process, a fit for purpose way of working. So different teams in different situations, even though they might be working for the same organization, will work in different ways. They have to. And this is easy to observe if you choose to. So the days of repeatable processes, frankly, they never had days. I'll be blunt. The idea of repeatable processes was just fundamentally flawed. And it's observably true. A team, like I said, a team of 5 people work very differently than a team of 50 people. Come on. Right. So all you have to do is look around your organization. You can see it's not true and never was, and what was not desirable in any, except of course from a bureaucratic point of view. So we need to do better. And then when it comes to scaling strategically, we can apply Agile across the organization, Agile and Lean and other techniques across the organization. So we've architected the DA toolkit into 4 layers. First, a foundational layer of basic fundamental concepts. And what's interesting here is you can see in DA, we've adopted strategies from Agile, from Lean, and from the traditional serial world. Our goal is not to be Agile. It's to help you to improve and to get better and to learn how to get better, and adopt the best strategy that you can do in your situation. And sometimes that's an Agile strategy. Sometimes this is a very traditional strategy, and that's okay. Do the best that you can do in the situation that you face. Excuse me. The next layer is the discipline DevOps layer. This is basically table stakes for modern organizations. And even an organization in the most traditional of environments, say a construction organization that builds houses, you still have an IT group. You still rely on software, and you need to be effective at that. Otherwise, you are not as competitive as you can be. So the idea here is in DA, we support enterprise class DevOps. How does it all fit together? So it's not just about DevOps plus DevSecOps plus data DevOps and so on, but it's, what is the overall holistic picture? How do these things fit together? Because it really is all about getting all of these things working well. Because all it takes is one group in your organization to be ineffective and they drag everybody else down. Building upon that is the value stream layer. How do you bring products and services to your customers? So there's various aspects to that effort. These hexes represent process areas, or what we call process blades. So the idea is that different groups of people will work in different ways. So the marketing team will work in a much different manner than the security team, who works differently than the strategy team, and so on. Yet they still need to collaborate together. They still need to work together. They need to do the best they can in the situation that they face and always be improving, always be getting better. So we give options for doing exactly that. And I'll show you what that means in a minute. And then the next layer is the Discipline Agile Enterprise layer. These are all the supporting functions or supporting areas that enable the value streams to do what they do. So finance and people management, HR, and so on. So all of these areas in your organization need to fit together reasonably well, hopefully very well. They can all improve. They can all get better. No matter how good your finance folks are, they can always get better. They can always be more effective. They can always learn and improve and get better and support the rest of the organization more effectively. And I would say the same thing of HR, of your IT group, of your marketing group, and so on. So the focus of today, I apologize for my dog. He's protecting me from my wife, actually, who's coming in the door. The focus today is on Discipline Agile delivery. How do you apply Discipline Agile in the software world, or more importantly, the solution world? Because it's not just about software. One of the challenges with the Discipline Agile community, or the Agile community, is that they focus on software development, and that's great. It's wonderful, but there's also hardware. There's changes to business processes. There's changes to your organization structure. There's supporting documentation and so on. So it's really about solutions, not just software. So when I use the term solution, it's really almost always a software-based solution. And sometimes software is not even involved. It could all be manual, and that's okay. Do the best you can in the situation you face. So what is Discipline Agile? Excuse me. Discipline Agile is a toolkit. It's not a framework. This is an incredibly important nuance. So where frameworks tell you what to do, they provide what they believe to be best practices. DA is a toolkit. We instead indicate, here's what you need to think about. Here are some options to address those issues. You choose the right strategies for you in the situation that you face. Because there is no such thing as a best practice. That is marketing rhetoric. Any given practice or strategy has advantages and disadvantages. It works well in some situations and is a phenomenally bad idea in others. So don't be fooled. Think. So what you want to do is make better decisions. You want to choose the right techniques for you in the situation that you face that will enable you to get the job done, whatever the job happens to be. So it's just like tonight when you go to make dinner, you're not going to pull the same ingredients off the shelf that and make the same dinner that you had last night and the night before and the night after and so on. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to pick the right ingredients for whatever dinner you want to make tonight for your family, and you're going to do whatever it takes to make that dinner. And tomorrow night you'll do something different and something different again, and so on. And what you'll do is you'll put together a dinner that reflects the tastes and desires of your family. It also reflects the ingredients you have at hand and what you plan, maybe what you plan for, maybe not, because things change. So do the right thing in the situation that you face. So there's there's actually thousands of practices and strategies out there. So what we do in Discipline Agile is we put them into context. So here you have, and this is just a small subset of the practices captured in Discipline Agile. So what you want to do is pull the right techniques off the shelf, just like you pull the right ingredients off the shelf, and put together your way of working for whatever situation that you face. That's the strategy. And of course, there's starter recipes, life cycles. We'll talk about that in a bit. It's not just, start from scratch every time. Discipline Agile, the Discipline Agile toolkit is architected. We saw 4 layers earlier on, a few slides ago, but there's also 4 views or 4 aspects. So what is the mindset? How do you think? The people view, how are we organized? What are the roles and responsibilities and team structures? Flow, what are the life cycles and workflows? So how do we work together? And the practices. So, what do we do? What are the techniques that we would follow? So I just wanted to point this out because the rest of the presentation is organized working through these 4 views. And at all levels of the toolkit, at all 4 of those layers that we saw earlier, the toolkit is organized into that. So we talk about these 4 views and work through these 4 views at all the layers for each of those and for each of those hexes, those process areas, the process blades. So mindset. So many of you are probably familiar with the Agile Manifesto, or more accurately, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It was written 20 years ago to solve the problems faced by software developers 20 years ago. So it's great. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I think it's one of the most important things to ever happen in the software engineering space. Certainly the most impactful, I believe, or easily up there. But to be fair, we have to also recognize that it's 20 years old. Many of the problems that it was addressing 20 years ago have been solved. We don't really face those problems anymore, or at least some of them. And it was for software development. It had a very narrow focus, and rightfully so. That's a good thing. But that's not our focus today. We're applying Agile across the organization. So we really need something for enterprise agility. And to be blunt, we've learned a few things in 20 years, so we can do better. So anyways, at PMI a couple of years ago now, we stepped back and we have been trying to, extend the Agile Manifesto. We had something called the Discipline Agile Manifesto. We were one of the first groups to actually, have the gall to extend the holy writ of the Agile Manifesto. And many other people have done that since then. But anyways, we started to realize a few years ago, being further down this path than most others, that the format of the manifesto really wasn't getting the job done. It was too constraining. So we stepped back and we said, you know what, knowing what we know today, how would we rewrite the manifesto from scratch if we had to, capture it? So we came up with this. So we believe in a collection of principles. And because we believe in them, we make promises, both to ourselves and to others. Here's how we're going to work. Here's how we're going to behave. In order to fulfill these promises, we follow a collection of guidelines. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of great ideas here. Most of it's lean, not all, but most of it. A lot of it is people-oriented, like, psychological safety, embracing diversity, having environments that foster joy, being awesome. A little California stuff going on there. But anyways, there's a lot of people-oriented stuff, just like in the Agile Manifesto. There's a lot of good lean stuff, and of course some Agile stuff as well. But also, our focus is enterprise agility, not just software agility. So concepts like enterprise awareness, for example, improving predictability, for example, and many others. So we're looking at the bigger picture. How do we work together? What mindset do we need to be successful at the organizational level? Then we have the people view. So what are the roles and responsibilities? So some of the roles on DAD teams, Discipline Agile Delivery teams. So the fundamental team is comprised of 4 roles. Team lead. Team lead is a generic meta role in many ways. So different types of teams have different types of leaders. A Scrum team might have a Scrum Master leading it. A project team might have a project manager. The marketing team might have the VP of marketing. The enterprise architecture team might have a chief architect, and so on. So different types of teams have different types of leads. In DA, we are not limited to a single framework. We choose to think outside of the Scrum box. For example, yes, you might have Scrum Masters, but you might not, and that's okay. Different types of teams have different types of leads. We have an explicit architecture owner. This is our version of an Agile architect. Who this person leads the technical decisions and the architectural decisions and guides and mentors the team through making these important long-term decisions. Product owner, an idea we adopted from Scrum. This is one way of potentially getting requirements and representing the stakeholders to the team. And of course, the team members, everybody else. So those are the basic 4 team roles. We explicitly call out stakeholders, not just customers. Unfortunately, the term customer, I love the term customer, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately, the term customer has been bastardized and many people misunderstand it. So you have both internal and external customers. So we don't want to forget the internal stakeholders. So the term stakeholder is much more, even though I love the term customer, the term stakeholder is much more robust and appropriate over the long term. So these are the primary roles on a team that you'll see regardless of scale. But as you start to face complexities, there's supporting roles. Sometimes we bring specialists into the team. So we might have somebody, so say, for example, we're on a larger team, we might have a program manager, a specialist. We might have enterprise architects coming in, supporting us, or user interface experts coming in. We might bring in domain experts. So the product owner doesn't know everything. So they might bring in somebody, a domain expert to walk us through complex topics. Similarly, technical experts. We might bring in a security engineer to help us through some really hard security challenges. At scale, particularly when we're in a regulatory space or when we're taking on, we're building a complex solution, we might have independent testers. So agile teams are not always whole, and that's okay. Sometimes just the nature of the problem we're taking on forces this, and sometimes the fact that we're in a regulatory space and by law we need to have independent testing. That's gonna address it. And then we have integrators. So when we have a large product that we're building or a very complex product, we might have somebody focused on on doing the system integration and integrating into the business as well. So it's more than just system integration. So anyways, these supporting roles are as needed, if needed, when needed, type of a thing. So you'll start to see them appearing when we're taking on harder problems than what you normally read in the Agile literature. And that's okay. And to be fair, actually, if you're familiar with SAFe, they call out some of these roles, particularly the integrator tester people. And of course, there's specialist roles throughout the organization. It's not just about software development teams or solution delivery teams, I should say. We might have reuse engineers, business architects, enterprise architects, portfolio managers, operations people, procurement people, and so on, and many, many others, of course. And we will collaborate with these people. We'll even bring them into the team for a while in order to help us out. And that's okay. Do what you need to do in the situation that you face. Another one of the views is flow. So how do we combine these strategies? How do we work together over time? So flow is often captured in life cycles as well as in business, like normal business process flow. So one of the things we do in Discipline Agile is we explicitly recognize that different teams will work in different ways. So as a result, we support multiple life cycles. Now, from the point of view of the frameworks and the methods, this is often seen as heresy because they want to push a single way of working. But I would invite you to step back and observe what is actually happening in your organizations. Yes, you have project teams. Yes, you have agile teams and lean teams. You also have some serial teams working in a more traditional manner. You have different types of teams. You might have exploratory teams and so on. So you need to explicitly recognize this, and we do in DA. So at the present moment, we currently support an agile project lifecycle. We also support an agile continuous delivery lifecycle. Both of these are based on Scrum. We support a lean project lifecycle, a lean continuous delivery lifecycle, more of a DevOpsy way of working, based on Kanban. The top two life cycles are project life cycles. The bottom two life cycles are product or long-standing or service team oriented life cycles, depending on your situation. We support an exploratory life cycle based on lean startup, where you take a hypothesis-driven approach, you build MVPs, you run experiments, you discover what your customer base actually wants. And a program life cycle, a large team of teams. How do we take on large problems? Coming up in the near future will be a serial life cycle, more of a traditional way of working to fit in with showing how that fits in with everything else, because most organizations are hybrids with a wide range of different types of teams working different ways, and two citizen developer life cycles. So how do we bring software development to and put it into the hands of the business people? And PMI has a very strong offering called Citizen Developer, based on how do we effectively in practice use these low code, no code tools to build important mission critical systems. So this is an example of the Agile life cycle. There's a lot of detail here. I'm not going to go into it, but a couple of interesting points. First of all, this is typically a project-based life cycle. It has more than just the, excuse me. It has explicit phases. So how do we initiate? How do we do inception? So how do we do project initiation? How do we get our act together at the beginning? Some people call this sprint 0, but it's typically more than just a sprint, and it's very different than a normal construction sprint. How do we do construction? And then how do we release into production? How do we transition our solution into the hands of our stakeholders? Outside of all this, and there's far more to the life cycle, the overall life cycle than this, of course. There's initial portfolio and product management that occurs long before the project team kicks off, like ideation, perhaps, type stuff. There's operations and support efforts that happen after the product is released into the marketplace. Along the bottom, you can see these phases. You also see lightweight milestones. So how do we take a risk-based, not an artifact-based approach to governance? Because one of the challenges, if I go back to this previous slide, one of the challenges from an organizational point of view is if all my teams are working in different ways, and rightfully so, I want them to be as effective as possible. I do not want them following repeatable processes. That is not a good strategy at all. But I want them to follow a fit-for-purpose approach. But if they're all working differently, how do I lead them? How do I monitor them? How do I govern them? So we bake that right into the Discipline Agile Toolkit, because you will be governed, and you deserve to be governed well. But because different teams are working different ways, producing different types of artifacts, we can't rely on consistent artifacts being created. That's just useless bureaucracy. That's not governance, that's bureaucracy. Instead, what we want them to do is provide visibility into what's going on, and we want them to address the risks that they face. And of course, we want to enable them to be successful. That's what real governance is all about. So this is what we enable, and this is what we explicitly show you how to do in the DA Toolkit. And part of that explicit governance are these lightweight, risk-based milestones that you see across the bottom of the screen here. And what's interesting, some of these are implied in some of the frameworks, like Scrum, for example, is at the end of every sprint, what they call an iteration. They explicitly have a go, no-go decision. That's asking about the continued viability. And it's also, by implication, the sufficient functionality milestone. Have we produced enough to ship, basically? So anyways, it's risk-based, not artifact-based. This is the continuous delivery lean cycle, more of a, based on Kanban. This is more of a long-standing team type of life cycle. So you'll see services teams following this. You'll see, advanced product teams doing this, maybe releasing updates into production many, many times a day. And even though they're working in that way, whereas on this previous life cycle, this team, a team following this life cycle might release into production in 6 months. They do a project, they build a bunch of stuff, they get out the door, and it took them 6 months. Fair enough. They're still addressing the same basic risk-based milestones as this team does on a daily basis. Now, because this is not a project team, it's a product or a services team, you don't see the phases. The phases have disappeared. So the transition phase has been automated out of existence. We're doing a full DevOps, fully automated testing and delivery and all that good sort of stuff. So yes, we still transition, but it's fully automated. This is the exploratory life cycle based on lean startup, where we're testing one or more hypotheses with our customers or potential customers, as the case may be, and we're learning, we're observing and measuring, we're pivoting where we need to, but eventually we home in on, hey, this is something that the marketplace needs. So then we prioritize it by following one of the other life cycles. So different teams work in different ways. Then there's the practices view. So how do we, what are we doing on a daily basis in behind the scenes while we're following these life cycles? And the point is that there are hundreds or thousands of different practices out there, different strategies. So just like, a craftsperson has multiple tools in their toolkit, as a professional, you need to have multiple tools in your intellectual toolkit. So that way you can use the right tool, apply the right practice in the situation that you face. So we capture this in a product we call the Agile browser. I'll show you examples of this in a minute. It's also captured in PMI's Choose Your Wow book, of which myself and Mark Lyons co-wrote. And this is basically a reference manual for putting practices into perspective, into context. And we'll see examples you can actually read in a minute. So don't try to, if any of you are squinting at what the heck I'm showing in that book. But the point is that we're the Scrum Guide, which is awesome. It's a 13-page document. There's 13 pages of content in the Scrum Guide, and it's great content, but I don't care how good those 13 pages are. It's only 13 pages, not a lot of details, and that's okay. That's what their focus is. In Discipline Agile, we provide the details and the options that the methods and frameworks don't, because we want to give you choices. We want to help you have a fit-for-purpose way of working that makes sense for you in your situation. So we go into a little more detail. So how do we do this? Because when there's hundreds or thousands of practices, how the heck do you find them? So part of the solution is, we abstract them, and we abstract things out. It's part of the architecture. So what we've done is we've abstracted team agility into what we call process goals. So these are things that your teams need to address, issues that your teams need to address in some way. And this is from the point of view of a project team, mostly doing software, more than likely doing some sort of solution delivery stuff. So let's walk through an example. So these process goals are high level. These are high level things we need to do. It's not a lot of advice here. Nice to see that it's organized, but not a lot of advice at this level, and that's okay. So let's dive down to the next level. So we describe your options, or we overview your options, I should say, in terms of what we call process goal diagrams. So the way that you read this is that explore scope is one of the process goals that we saw on that previous slide. When you're exploring scope, there's several issues or decision points that you should probably consider. For example, what is the purpose of what we're building? How are people going to use? What's the usage of this solution? Do we have any data that we need to collect and use? What about the business processes that we support? What about the user interface? And so on. So there's many different aspects of scope that we should really consider and we should think about. Now, sometimes the frameworks will often make decisions for you, and that's comfortable, but are they making the right decisions for you? Then on the right side, we see option lists. So for each of the decision points, such as explore usage, there's multiple options. There's different ways, different approaches that you can take to explore usage. Each of those options, each of those practices or strategies, as the case may be, has advantages and disadvantages. There is no such thing as a best practice. That is marketing rhetoric. It's an observably false premise. For a practice to be best, it should work in all situations, and it's not, right? And you know this as professionals. You know this. Any given practice has advantages and disadvantages. It works well in some situations and might be best for a certain class of situation, or the best that you can do, more accurately, in a class of certain situations. But it's a phenomenally bad idea in other situations. So it's potentially the worst practice that you could do, the worst approach you could take, or somewhere in between, of course. So every given practice has advantages and disadvantages. There's two types of options lists here. There's ordered lists, the ones with arrows beside them, and unordered lists, no arrows. When a list is ordered, what that indicates is the strategies towards the top of the list are generally more effective than the strategies towards the bottom of the list. So in many ways, it's like a mini maturity model, or the continuous version of CMM, or CMMI, I should say, in that case. Not quite, but close conceptually. So anyways, when a list is unordered, we can tell you what the trade-offs are of each strategy, but we can't tell you that this one is generally better than this one. Just the nature of the beast. So the point is that we don't know what situation you're in. I cannot tell you what the best practices are for you, because I don't know your situation. I don't know you. I don't know your situations. Neither can any of the people producing frameworks, by the way. They can't. All they can tell you is what worked for them in some situations, and then they pitch it as best practices. And what happens is the frameworks effectively redact your options. They redact your choices. So they'll say, here's this collection of best practices that work well. Do this. Just do what you're told, and everything will be fine. And you will be doing our framework, and we'll certify you in it, and you will be one of the lucky few. Well, the reality is no. There's many different choices. Choose the right ones for you if you want to be effective. And I should also point out, we're not saying that these are all the potential options in the known universe, but we give you enough choices to let you know that there are, and it's constantly evolving. We're constantly adding new things. We give you enough choices to let you know you have choice, and we help you make better choices. And as you can also see, if you're familiar with the business analysis space, there are some lean techniques here, there's some agile techniques here, and there's some traditional techniques here. Because Discipline Agile is a hybrid. It's not just about being agile, it's about being effective. Let's walk through an example. So if my team is running into an issue around the way we explore scope, then how do we use the toolkit to improve? Well, if I have somebody on my team with reasonable business analysis experience, then chances are this goal diagram is enough of a reminder, because in some ways it's sort of like a checklist of potential techniques out there. And someone in the team can say, "Oh yeah, in the past I was on a team, we used flowcharts. Flowcharts are great, and it solves this is we should experiment with flowcharts to see if flowcharting is going to be what we need to address whatever challenge we currently face." But let's assume that we don't have somebody with business analysis experience in the team, because we're not perfect, we're only human. So what do? Well, we dive down to the next level of detail. So say we have an issue around the way we're exploring usage. In this case, we don't understand what new potential customers want. We understand our existing customers, and we're doing well there, but we don't understand the requirements of potential non-customers yet. So what do? So we dive down to the next level of detail in the toolkit. This is a screenshot from the Discipline Agile browser. If you remember a few slides ago, I had a picture of the Choose Your Wow book and was open to a bunch of tables. Well, this is the digital version of that. So the Discipline Agile browser is available free of charge from pmi.org. You need to be a member, but you can sign up for free, basically. So what the browser does is it enables you to navigate these sorts of diagrams, because if you remember that there's the one diagram with the 26 process goals on it, then we dove down to this next level of detail. Now we're diving down again. So the idea is you keep diving down to the level of detail that you need. So in this case, because we're not business analysis experts, we need to do a little bit of reading about what these various options are. So for each of these techniques, we have a short description, a couple paragraphs at most, usually, of what the technique's all about. We also have an indication of the trade-offs. What are the advantages and disadvantages? So we put it into context. We want to put you in a position to make a better decision around what technique should we be experimenting with to do process improvement for our team in our situation. Now, if this is not enough level of detail, so for example, we read about personas and it sounds, hey, personas sound like it would help us. There's still not a lot of detail there, right? So to go down to the next level, I don't have a slide showing this. We have references. So you would click on a reference and it would lead to a blog posting or a book or a video, perhaps, going into the details of here's what personas are all about, and here's how you create them. So you keep diving down into the level of details that you need. And the idea being that you want to make better decisions as to how to improve. So in DA, we do the same, so that was, for requirements-oriented techniques. Of course, we support technical-oriented techniques. So where some of the methods and frameworks, so Scrum, for example, purposely does not go into technical issues. In DA, we do. We give you options for that and many different types of techniques. Here's some more. We couldn't fit it on a single goal diagram because there's a lot of technical practices out there. So anyways, here's some supporting practices around testing and configuration management and other good things. And of course, governance. I mentioned governance earlier, and I also mentioned that we support risk-based lightweight milestones, but that's not the only aspects of governance. So we support. So governance is not a swear word in Discipline Agile. like I said, you are being governed. You deserve to be governed well. And we have explicit support for team level governance as well as organization level governance, because if you're not being governed well, if senior management does not know how to enable and support your Agile efforts, you will fail. And the sad fact is that the vast majority of Agile transformations are failures. Depending on whose stats you look at, it's anywhere between 2/3 and 90% are failures. And a big part of that is the organization just doesn't evolve. And part of that is poor, misaligned governance with the new ways of working. So it doesn't have to be. So anyways, we support effective governance if you choose to be governed effectively. And of course, and one more example, we also support coordination. So it's about more than just having a 15-minute stand-up meeting every day. Come on, think for yourselves. How do you coordinate your work within teams? How do you coordinate across teams, across a program, across geographic locations? We've learned this the hard way, right? COVID has taught us how to do remote work, for example, and we had that built right into DA years ago. So the organizations that were doing DA when COVID hit, they just shifted gears a bit. They didn't have to scramble and figure this stuff out. They already had they're probably already doing it to begin with, but they were able to pivot quickly because they had the access to the toolkit. So the goal diagrams are your pantry of ingredients, getting back to making dinner. Your life cycles are starter recipes. So, for example, if we decide to, excuse me, if we decide to have lasagna tonight for dinner, we have a lasagna recipe, but I'm going to modify that to make lasagna that my daughter will eat. Call it like it is, right? There's certain vegetables she'll eat, certain vegetables she's not going to eat. So we have to modify the recipe, and then as her tastes change over the years, the rest, our approach to making lasagna evolves, and that's okay. So it's not about safe versus DA or Scrum versus DA or less versus DA. It's really safe plus DA. So our strategy is to start where you are, do the best that you can in the situation you face, and always strive to get better. So if you're currently a safe shop, we can help you make safe more. Discipline Agile gives you the skills to evolve safe, to make it right for you, and to make it better. If you're currently a Scrum shop, or some of your teams are doing Scrum, great. We can fill in the blanks, that the gaping holes in Scrum, and help you to be effective at Scrum or Spotify or less, or traditional, whatever you're currently doing. So start where you are. So Discipline Agile fulfills the promises of the frameworks. So where the frameworks will talk about, well, yes, our adopt our method, adopt our framework. It's the art of the possible. You can do anything you want. You can tailor it to meet your own needs. You can evolve it, but then they give you no advice to do that other than hire our consultants. In DA, we give you the missing advice from all these frameworks in order to help you to really be successful and become learning organizations. So just to wrap up here before I go to questions, so how do you learn more about DA? Well, you can go to pmi.org, and we have a incredible amount of information freely available about DA. But we also offer training. Well, our training partners offer training. So we have a Discipline Agile Scrum Master training for introduction to Agile and Lean, introduction to DA. So how do we improve? How do we learn to improve at the team level? Then the Senior Scrum Master. How do we lead improvement across the team? How do we apply the DA toolkit to take advantage of these goal diagrams, to take advantage of these practices and other aspects of DA, and put them into context and evolve them for you in your situation? Then the DA coach. How do we lead improvement across disparate teams? So my team isn't an island. We have to interact. We have to collaborate with others. So for my team to get funding, I have to interact with the finance people. How can I work together effectively with them? Because if I'm trying to be agile and the finance people are still following a traditional approach based on annual budgeting, I've got a serious problem. If I have to buy new equipment, I have to work with the procurement team. Once again, if they're working in a misaligned manner, that's a problem. I have to work with the HR people to hire people. Once again, if they're misaligned, that's a problem. So how do we align? How do we choose to improve across teams, so that way my team can improve the way we do procurement or get funded or whatever, and the finance team learns how to fund teams more effectively. The procurement team learns how to serve teams more effectively, and so on. And then the value stream consultant, how do we lead improvement across value streams? This is more of an enterprise coach. How do we get a large number of teams working together effectively and tweak and tune and improve the process over time, so that way we become more effective, more competitive in the marketplace? So that's the basic learning strategy. So there's a career path here. You work your way up the food chain, and focus on what you want to do in your career. So a lot of great advice there. So anyways, so thank you very much. I believe I have time for some questions, for some Q&A. So let's do that. Let's go to Q&A.
Thank you, Scott, very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting presentation. So we ask the participants if they have any questions. I have a few ones, and not exactly from the area, but well, one of the questions is in relation to things that usually happen, at least in Uruguay. You have many people going into the team and out, and, large rotations in the team. So these disciplines help in these situations, or is it difficult to work when people are coming to the team and not necessarily trained in the same methodologies?
Yeah, so this is a problem. So first, it's a serious problem. This is in the people management process blade, the one that focuses on HR, human resources. We talk about these sorts of things. So bringing people in and out of teams, like for short engagements because they're contractors or whatever, is a really poor way of organizing teams. There's a heck of a lot of risk in doing that, because they don't know, because the team is basically resetting every time a new person comes in or a person leaves. And then there's all this overhead of bringing them onto the team. So what you really want to do, ideally, is to build long-standing cross-functional teams and keep the team together. Now, people are going to leave your organization; they're going to join your organization, so the team evolves over time. But you really do want them to stay together, and you want to reduce the churn. Now, if you can't, for whatever reason, then you're going to take a hit on that, and you're always going to struggle with productivity. You're always going to struggle with culture. You're always going to struggle with just ineffective ways of working, because people are constantly coming up to speed and reinventing the wheel and relearning everything. So I would choose. So if your organization is like that, I would choose to focus on improving your HR practices. That seems to be where a big problem is. So in DA, like I said, our strategy is to start where you are and do the best that you can. So sounds like there's lots of room for improvement in your HR practices in that case. So I'd be tempted to start there. Because you'll have a huge impact if we could just get this contractor gig worker concept under better control, then we can be more effective on our teams. So start there.
I think it's good counsel. A second question leads with the value the methodologies have. I think it's clear for the organization itself and how effective it can be. But do they also have some value for the customers extrinsically? Are the customers somehow involved, or do they see or recognize the value the methodologies add? Or well, it's just something that we must do to be more effective, and the customer is indifferent?
Yeah, it's really about you, right? So the customers need to know how to interact with you. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant tonight, do you know how they're working in the back kitchen? Like, no. I worked in restaurants for years, but I got an idea how it might work, but I don't know. So there's a restaurant down the street from me. If we go to that tonight for dinner, I don't know how they work in the back kitchen, nor do I care. I just don't care. What I do care about is how do I order? Well, I look at a menu. I ask the server, hey, bring us these things, and then it comes out, and we know how a restaurant works, right? I don't care how it works in the back kitchen as long as my food is good. Perfect. So the customers generally don't care about the process. They just need to know how to interact with you effectively. That's what they care about. Everything else, don't waste my time with that.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there any other question from the attendants? Yes, we have a question from Diego Spear. How this proposal relates or not with other proposals that are trying to free the practices from methods, like Essence software engineering, Ivar-Jacobson proposal?
Yeah, it works phenomenally well with Essence. So we're completely philosophically aligned. So the focus of Essence is on software engineering. I'm actually on their board of advisors, and have been from the very beginning. But we're very well aligned with that concept, because they're doing the same thing, right? They're putting various practices in a context and showing you how to choose your own way of working. Our focus, so they go deep into software, whereas our focus is broader. We actually go deep into software too, but not as deep as they do. But our focus is broader to the entire organization. So, for example, it doesn't really matter how effective your software teams are if the finance team is shooting you in the foot constantly, right? Or if your help desk people are undermining everything that you're doing. You might bring a great product to market, and the help desk people, or the services people, the operations people, whoever is running it, are out there telling all your customers it's a horrible product, don't use it. You're out of luck, right? So you got to be working together effectively as an organization throughout the entire value stream. So I love Essence. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fantastic, and we're constantly referring to it, but you got to look at the bigger picture as well.
Thank you very much. Another question? Well, I have another question. Have you visited Uruguay? Do you know our software engineering community?
I visited Uruguay, Montevideo, actually, years ago as a tourist. I haven't really done any work there, although I've interacted with people from there, but I haven't physically been there except for tourism. But yeah, I've worked all over South America. I've done a lot of work in Brazil, of course, but Peru and parts of Central America as well. But I've never had the privilege of working in Uruguay.
Okay, well, we hope that sometime not so far in the future you can visit us, and maybe we can have another Eurocon physically, or some other opportunity to have you visit here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, it seems there are no more questions. At least we have not received other ones. So with this, we thank you very much for participating in the conference, for your talk, and well, let's hope to see you soon again.
Definitely, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I wish everybody well. You can do this, and you really want to. You really do want to have a fit-for-purpose approach that meets the needs of your situation, and that evolves over time. I think if COVID taught us one thing, we have to be prepared to pivot. We have to be prepared to change our ways of working, sometimes very quickly, sometimes not so quickly, because the world is constantly changing. We're constantly learning. I hope we're constantly improving. So DA is the toolkit that enables you to do that.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks.